What I would like to talk about today is looking at the Cuban independence movement and the depictions of Martí from the point of view of newspapers published in the US-Mexico border, specifically a number of newspapers in Arizona, California, and Texas. In paying attention to, well, both the English and the Spanish speaking publications there. It is not obviously an exhaustive overview of this, so I would like to share those preliminary findings. And some of the things that I can tell you about what we will be looking into is the ways in which Martí and the Cuban struggle is depicted from this point of the United States as a struggle that fits into the lineage of the American Revolution and the Republican ideals. In other words, kind of an offshoot of the United States, which is, of course, interesting to take a look at. Another quite interesting and maybe surprising is how some depictions go at placing some of these leaders as aristocratic. So it is a movement that is not for the masses, allegedly, but it is quite interesting, exotic, if you will. And we can think here about the ways in which these newspapers are translating not only Cuba, the Cuban independence movement, and leaders for the readership in the American West. So the ways in which it's Americanized, exoticized, and also the issue of race and the connections that the Cuban revolutionary movement had with Haiti and Puerto Rico. So it is quite an interesting panoply of things. And of course, at the end, how many of these publications are contributing to the establishment of the myth of Martí. Did he die? Did he not? And so forth. So some of the things that I found interesting, I'll share a couple of snippets here. It was necessary to introduce the war to the readers in the American West, the US-Mexico border. So we see here very basic chronology of things. And of course, José Martí is going to be one of the main things that we want to take a look at. I found some publications that take full pages. This one is from the Los Angeles Herald in May 15, 1898. And this is quite an interesting depiction of those leaders. You can see our Martí right here. And some of the things that this particular piece highlights pertaining to the liberators of Cuba has to do with the fact that in this publication's view, this is a movement led by the aristocracy, as you see here. So I'm sharing some quotes here. And again, the emphasis on Americanizing the struggle, the spirit of Patrick Henry, as you see here, the Boston Tea Party, being pretty much alive in Cuba, which is there, but one wonders also, what about the homegrown independence ideals and the richness of Martí's thinking? So this is also kind of a maybe troubling for some of us point of view, as making those Cuban planters akin to Southern gentlemen. So thinking about Cuba looks like as an extension of the American South, and as some other works, Matt Pratt Gutierrez's book, The American Mediterranean, thinking about this region of the American South and Cuba as this Mediterranean that pertains to the United States. And of course, again, the emphasis on how the connections, the intercourse between Cubans and United States, Martí himself being exiled and living in New York, brought about the struggle. Looks like if it had not been for the United States and these ideas this struggle would not have been taking place. So top-down type of struggle that we see here. And pertaining to Martí specifically, there's quite a bit of more balanced overview on him, an ideal hero, as you see here. But again, the emphasis on his aristocratic nature. So, and allegedly, well, what did he stood for? Not, democracy or a patria para todos, but according to this newspaper, again, this is the Los Angeles Herald, a rule not by the greatest number, but just the best peoples. In contrast, we can see El Fronterizo, a newspaper from Tucson, Arizona, highlighting a bit more specifically the thrust of Martí's significance in this struggle and the ways in which he was indeed el piloto que conducía la nave. Not the aristocrat, but a very different type of guy that is going to be thinking about and mobilizing the masses, or a patria para las masas, as we will see later on. Of course, there is too the topic of the Tampa and Key West Cubans, and again, maybe troubling depictions of these groups, and we've heard in previous sessions the richness of, and we witnessed it ourselves when we were in Tampa, the richness of the Cubans, Cuban dynamics supporting the Cuban independence movement. Here, you only get to see a very limited version of things. Tampa Cubans after work practicing with their Winchesters, and that was that. Likewise, for those in Key West, anxious to participate, and of course, this is hinting at something more that these newspapers in the U.S.-Mexico border do not delve into, but it is noting the significance and the transnational impact of this struggle. Haiti and Puerto Rico, as it was mentioned, it is clearly a wider movement that is going on here. But again, the newspapers or the news don't really get to this side of the world, the U.S.-Mexico border, and this is pretty much what we have. But I found, again, that despite the inaccuracies or the exoticism, seems like the emphasis of Martí and his significance is being rescued in some ways, as we see here, and his importance not only within Tampa or New York or within the United States, but within the wider Caribbean area. This is just another point on the significance of revolutionary clubs. Quite a bit of information on the many clubs, the membership of those clubs. We see here 200 revolutionary clubs, membership of more than 50,000. That's kind of blurry, but just to give you an idea. And again, the role of Martí. This is the brain child of Martí, the ability of organizing these clubs that, as we saw, not only span the United States, but go beyond the continental US. Seems like then the issues of race within the rebel army are also a significant point that many newspapers, specifically in Texas, spend quite a bit of time teasing out the membership of the Revolutionary Corps and trying to, looks like, wrapping their head around the fact of half white and half blacks. What do you do with that? And how the latter make the best soldiers. And also translating it for the American West audience. The Cubans, just like Indians, kind of an interesting ways of introducing or trying to explain this struggle. And according to the forward Gazette, Marti, the leader of the white section, and again, just opens up a number of questions and lacunas of knowledge, as we know. So the other thing that I wanted to touch to conclude here is the solidarity that came about because of the connections with Mexican newspapers. And specifically, I chose this piece from El Observador Mexicano in Phoenix, and it is talking about a purchasing of a medal of sorts that, according to this, it's worth $1, and it says here, después de terminar la guerra con éxito y establecerse el gobierno libre y republicano en Cuba, estas piezas de plata se redimirán por la República Cubana al valor de $1 cada una. So here we see the work of the revolutionary clubs, indeed, and the solidarity. Seems like this was more directed to the Mexican audience in Phoenix and in other places, because it says here, deseamos ver puestos estos souvenirs al alcance de todos, no dudando que todos los mexicanos amadores de la libertad se aprovecharán cuando menos de una de estas medallas. So there is the solidarity emphasis, and that piece reads more to the coverage that was being published in Mexican newspapers. So lastly here, once José Martí dies in battle, there is all this flurry of small snippets of facts or information, or even bordering into the gossiping. Is José Martí alive? José Martí still lives. Remains of José Martí missing. And it looks like this type of pieces would be amenable to the American West, considering that there is this need to exoticize, but also to some sort of wanting to know what happened to the hero and not wanting the hero to die, sort of. So those are the things that I have here. And well, again, just to conclude, these ideas of not perhaps giving full credit to the Cuban independence movement, its ideals as a homegrown revolution, and the ideas of the leaders, of course, plenty of influence from the American Revolution, but not scratching on the Spanish American influence here. So the other 2 points, equating Cuban revolutionary leaders to the Southern gentlemen, and the Cuban independence movement as an aristocratic-led experiment. I think this gives us plenty of information to expand on these ideas. And of course, this is just a limited overview on this coverage from the US-Mexico border. So thank you. Now leave it there.